Okay guys, here we are. We are wrapping up 5.1. This is the last of the different types of problems that you'll have. And again, we're just trying to simplify things because we're going to get into solving equations, and we have to be able to do these little things before we can do an entire equation. So this last little part of 5.1 is they're going to give you a fraction, and they want you to rewrite it with no fractions. So here I have, this is an example, 1 over 1 plus cosine x. That's my problem. And what I want to do is rewrite this so that it equals something that is not a fraction. Could be messier. I only have one trig function in this problem right now written as a fraction. When I get done, it may have 2 or 3 more trig functions in it. But as long as we're not writing it as a fraction, that's the goal. That's what we want to do. So the ultimate goal here is to rewrite this so that it is not a fraction. And the way that you're going to do that is you're going to multiply the numerator and denominator by the conjugate. So remember, a conjugate, that's going to be the same expression as what you see on the bottom, except it's going to have the opposite sign in the middle. So conjugates are like the difference of two squares. Or sorry, no, they're not. A conjugate, it just has it's the same terms, but it's going to have the opposite sign. So we're going to multiply this fraction, 1 over 1 plus cosine x times 1 minus cosine x over 1 minus cosine x. So we're really not changing the problem because 1 minus cosine x over 1 minus cosine x is 1. So we're really just multiplying this by something that is equal to 1. So we're not changing it. The value of it, we're changing the way that it looks. So now what we're going to do is multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. So when I multiply these denominators, that is the difference. We're going to get the difference of two squares. So you FOIL this. So the first 1 times 1 is 1. And then we'll take 1 times a negative cosine x is just negative cosine x. Now we'll take this cosine x times that 1, which is a positive cosine x. And then we'll take cosine x times a negative cosine x, which is a negative cosine squared x. So now these are going to cancel out. And the only thing that we have left in the denominator is 1 minus cosine squared. So that's our denominator. And our numerator, 1 times 1 minus cosine x. 1 minus cosine x is the only thing in the numerator. So now what we need to do is think about what this can be replaced with here. 1 minus cosine squared x, that should be ringing a bell. It's a 1, it's got a minus sign, and it's got a trig function that is squared. So that should be screaming, hey, that's an identity. This whole thing right here can be replaced with sine squared. So we have 1 minus cosine x in the numerator over sine squared x. So now you're thinking, well, we wanted to write this as a fraction, and we wanted to write it with in a form that was not a fraction, and here we still have a fraction. Yes, we do. We can do something with that, so we're going to keep going. We still have a fraction, but we are getting somewhere. So let me erase that so I can fit this on my board. So I'm going to start with this right here, 1 minus cosine x over sine squared x. That's what we have so far. We want to keep going here. So what I'm going to do now is break apart this fraction. So remember, all your life you've been putting fractions together, getting a common denominator, putting them together, combining them to make one. Well, in trig and a lot of times in calc, we start breaking them apart. So you've got to know that if I have 2 terms in the numerator over the same denominator, I can break those apart and just keep them with the same denominator. So I could put 1 over sine squared x, and then I can put minus cosine x over sine squared x. So it's kind of working backwards. We're breaking the fraction, one fraction into two fractions now. So here we know that we can replace 1 over sine squared x with its reciprocal, which is going to be cosecant squared x. So this goes to cosecant squared x. And now here I still have minus cosine x over sine squared x. So we're going to have to break that up a little bit too, because it's still a fraction and we don't want a fraction in our answer. So we're going to break this up into cosecant squared x minus, now I'm going to rewrite this, and this is all one quantity, cosine x over 1 times 1 over sine squared x. So as you can see, this is one fraction. Now I've broken that into two fractions that are multiplied together, but they still equal the same thing. So now you go through and you replace those fractions with their reciprocals. So we have cosecant squared x still minus cosine x is going to stay cosine x. The reciprocal, and I leave it cosine x because I don't have a fraction. I do, I guess, because I have a denominator of 1, but you don't have to write that denominator of 1. So this can stay cosine x, and then 1 over sine squared x, same thing that we had up here, that's going to go to cosecant squared x. So right here's my answer. What did it do for me? Not really much at all. The only thing that I did was I rewrote the equation that we started with, not the equation, the expression that we started with that had fractions. It was a big fraction. This is the same thing as that fraction. It's just in a different form. So, you know, these are just fundamentals. I mean, you're thinking, why do I have to do this? Why do I care? Well, whenever you start solving equations, you're going to want to be able to do this so that we can solve those equations. We only have 9 days left after today, so I'm not sure how far we'll get, but we're still going to do some verifying, and we're still going to hopefully get into a little bit of the solving equations, and maybe we'll just end with a final exam over this type of stuff, or this chapter 5 test, and that'll be it. So there is that type of problem. The main thing is, the only thing that you have to do is make sure that if you have a fraction and you can't go anywhere else with it, and you want to get it out of a fraction, you're going to multiply the denominator and the numerator by the conjugate of the denominator. So, hope you have fun with these.